All right, today we are diving deep into the Battle of Plataea. This was the massive final land battle that truly decided the fate of Greece and put an end to the Second Persian invasion for good.
So a lot of people think the war was basically over after that incredible Greek naval victory at Salamis, right? Well, not so fast. King Xerxes, yeah, he went home, but he didn't just pack everything up. He left his top general, Mardonius, in charge of a massive elite army that was still camped right on Greek soil. The threat was anything but over.
Okay, so just to get our bearings, let's do a quick recap. 480 BC was an absolutely brutal year. The Persians won at Thermopylae, that famous Spartan last stand, and they even sacked Athens. But then, against all odds, the Greeks pull off this amazing win at sea at the Battle of Salamis, which forces Xerxes himself to head home. But that brings us to the summer of 479 BC. Mardonius is still there and his army is ready to finish what Xerxes started.
And this is where the story gets kind of strange. It sets the stage for a tense 11-day standoff. I mean, you have two of the largest armies in the ancient world ready for this epic, decisive battle, and they just sit there, staring at each other across a river.
So let's look at the players. On the Greek side, you've got the Spartan regent Pausanias, and he's leading this big coalition of different city-states: Sparta, Athens, Corinth, and more. Facing him is Mardonius, who's commanding this enormous imperial army. And get this, his army even included other Greeks from places like Thebes, who were allied with the Persians. The scale here is just staggering. We're talking about maybe 100,000 soldiers on the Persian side.
But the real difference between these two armies wasn't just numbers. It was their whole philosophy of fighting. The Greek hoplite was basically a walking tank. We're talking heavy bronze armor, a huge shield, a long spear, all working together in that super disciplined phalanx formation. The Persian infantry, on the other hand, was way more lightly armed. They used these wicker shields and relied on sheer, overwhelming numbers and just raining down these devastating volleys of arrows. Now, before the main event kicks off, there was this really key skirmish. The Persians sent in their cavalry, which was feared across the known world, led by their commander Masistius. The idea was to just harass the Greeks. But the Athenians held their ground, and in the chaos, Masistius actually gets unhorsed and killed. This was a huge psychological win for the Greeks. It proved the Persian cavalry wasn't invincible. The Persians were so devastated they actually shaved their own hair and the manes of their horses in mourning. Which brings us right back to that big question. With so much at stake, why on earth did these two gigantic armies just wait around for 11 days? It seems so bizarre. But you know what? It all came down to strategy and desperation. So here's how the pressure built up, step by step. First, you had this strategic deadlock because seers on both sides were getting omens that said victory would only come in a defensive battle. But Mardonius wasn't patient. He starts to squeeze the Greeks. He uses his superior cavalry to constantly poke and harass their lines. Then, he strikes a critical blow. He intercepts and destroys a huge Greek supply convoy. And his final move? Well, it was basically checkmate. He captures the Gargantuan spring, which was the Greeks' only source of water. Out of food and out of water, the Greeks had no choice. They had to move. They came up with a plan for a strategic retreat at night to find a better position. But in the dark, the whole thing just fell apart, spectacularly. I mean, it was a complete mess. In the darkness and confusion, the whole center of the Greek line marched way too far and basically got lost. The Athenians and some other groups were delayed right from the start, so an army that was built on cohesion suddenly shattered into 3 vulnerable pieces scattered across the battlefield. And to make a bad situation even worse, you had characters like this Spartan commander, Amphiritus. He just flat out refused the order to retreat. Why? He argued it was a cowardly thing for a Spartan to do. His defiance delayed the entire Spartan rearguard, leaving them dangerously exposed when the sun came up. So now, picture it from the Persian side. Mardonius looks across the field at dawn, and he sees exactly what he's been waiting for: chaos. He thinks these bickering Greeks are finally breaking and running for their lives. He totally mistakes a clumsy retreat for a panicked rout. Believing victory is his for the taking, he orders a full-scale charge to annihilate them. And this was his fatal mistake. Mardonius' huge miscalculation set the stage for the climax.
What he thought was just going to be a simple pursuit of a fleeing enemy turned into the single most decisive clash of the entire war. I mean, just imagine the scene. The Spartan and Tegean rearguard, already delayed, totally exposed, and now they see the entire Persian army charging right at them. With nowhere left to run, they did what Spartans do best. They stopped, they turned, and they prepared to fight against absolutely impossible odds. In the brutal fight that followed, those heavy Greek hoplites held their line against the lighter-armed Persians. And then came the turning point. Mardonius, leading from the front like a true commander, was killed. The historian Herodotus tells us a Spartan soldier named Aenemenestus struck him down with a stone. And just like that, with their charismatic leader dead, the Persian command structure and their morale just completely collapsed. And that was it. It was over. The Persian army broke and fled back towards their fortified camp, but the Greeks pursued them relentlessly. They stormed the camp walls, trapping thousands of Persian soldiers inside. What followed was a massacre that effectively destroyed the Persian army and ended the invasion of Greece for good. But the story of Plataea doesn't just end with the battle. Its real power, its true legacy, lies in how it was remembered. It became a cornerstone of Greek identity for centuries to come. To really get this, we can use this concept called a lieu de mémoire, which is French for a place of memory. Plataea became more than just a battlefield. It turned into this physical and symbolic place where the memory of Greek freedom and unity was actively preserved. And the Greeks were very methodical about this. They built stone trophies to mark the victory. They established an altar to Zeus the Liberator for shared sacrifices. The tombs of the fallen became sacred sites for annual rituals. They even created the Eleutheria, or freedom games, turning the memory of the battle into this living, breathing tradition. You know, the legacy of Plataea really proves that history isn't just about what happened. It's about what we choose to remember and how we choose to remember it. Which leaves us with a final thought, doesn't it? 2,500 years later, as we build our own monuments and tell our own stories, how do we choose which histories to commemorate, and for what purpose?